Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to my channel Internal Audit Lab by Noshin. Today I will discuss the remaining topic of Domain 3, which is proficiency and due professional care, and the remaining topics are due professional care and continuing professional development, which will be tested in the exam proficient aspect. Actually, both of these concepts will be tested in the exam in the proficient aspect. So let's begin the video. Due professional care is explained in Attribute Standard 1220, which is said that internal auditors must apply the care and skill expected of a reasonably prudent and competent internal auditor. Due professional care does not imply infallibility. That means due professional care implies reasonable care and competence, not any extraordinary performance. So when internal auditors do any sort of verification or examination, they will do it at a reasonable extent. Now, what are the implications of due professional care? The first thing is internal auditor should be independent of the activity they are auditing. Secondly, the person who are doing the internal audit, they should be collectively possessing the knowledge, skill and competencies to conduct the audit work properly and objectively. Thirdly, audit work be planned and supervised properly. Fourthly, the audit report should be objective, clear, concise and timely. And lastly, internal auditor should follow up the audit findings, and they should for ascertaining that whether the improvement measure has been taken correctively. Now, while exercising the due professional care, internal auditors need to be alert of any sort of fraud or irregularities, error or omissions, waste or inefficiencies, ineffectiveness, and conflict of interest. They should also identify the areas where inadequate control exists and should recommend the improvement measures for there. Now, what the implementation guide actually says about the due professional care. So, implementation guide actually highlights three important points. Firstly, due professional care requires conforming to IIS Code of Ethics or Organizational Code of Conduct or any other conduct which is required by the relevant professional certification obtained by the internal auditors. Secondly, internal audit activities has their own policies and procedure which facilitates the systematic and disciplined audit approach. So throughout this, following this systematic and disciplined audit approach, due professional care is also applied. And lastly, due professional care does not mean providing absolute assurance. As I already said, due professional care implies actually reasonable care and competence. Not any extraordinary performance is expected. So, due professional care does not mean that any sort of non-compliance or irregularities will not exist. Rather, it means for giving the reasonable assurance. Now, applying the due professional care in case of assurance engagement, actually 5 points are very much important here, which are the extent of work needed to achieve the engagement objective. Secondly, the relative complexity, materiality, significance of the matter to which assurance procedure are applied. Thirdly, adequacy and effectiveness of GRC process. Fourthly, probability of significant error, fraud or non-compliance. And lastly, cost of assurance in relation to potential benefit. So these 5 points are very much important because question may come from this area in the exam. So, for example, internal auditor cannot identify any red flag or fraud indicator. Say, for example, a person in the department is not taking leave for the last 3 years. So, this is definitely an indicator of a red flag. So, if internal auditor fails to identify this sort of red flag, then it is the lack of due professional care. And also, if the internal audit procedures are not done properly, like walkthrough are not conducted or work papers are not maintained properly. So it is also the example of not following the due professional care in case of assurance engagement. Now, the assurance engagement actually highlights due professional care regarding the assurance engagement in standards is saying that in exercising due professional care, internal auditor must consider the use of technology-based audit and other data analysis techniques. Since internal auditors are actually responsible for identifying any sort of red flag or fraud indicator, so applying the data analysis technique or technology-based audit is very much useful for identifying those red flag or fraud indicator. And secondly, internal auditor must be alert to significant risks that may affect the objective operation resources. But even after applying the due professional care, if the significant, it is not guaranteed that all significant risks will be identified. So if after applying the due professional care, all the significant risks are not identified, then internal auditor should not be blamed. Now, due professional care in case of consulting engagement, the following 3 points are very much important, which are needs and expectation of the client, the relative complexity and extent of work needed to achieve the engagement objective, and lastly, the cost of consulting engagement in relation to potential benefit. So the example of due professional care in case of consulting engagement include applying the knowledge of IIS standard in the internal audit work, or providing the objective comment about the proposed activity or the process audited, etc. Now come to the point, continuing professional development. The attribute standard 1230 says that internal auditor must enhance their knowledge, skill and other competencies through continuing professional development. So each and every internal auditor is responsible for conforming with these standards. They need to obtain the relevant education to maintain and enhance their proficiency. They need to stay abreast of the recent development in the internal audit standards or techniques, tools, along with the IPPF. The continuing professional education development can be achieved through occupational assignment, by mentoring someone, doing the networking, attending a training or giving any training, participating in a research program, obtaining formal education, and then attending conference or obtaining membership in professional bodies, and certification and recertification process. Now I offer different professional certification like internal audit practitioner, certified internal auditor, which is the flagship degree, and also certification risk management assurance, which is specialized degree. So some important points actually need to be remembered. So if you are a CIA, whether practicing or not practicing, you must complete the CPE, that is continuing professional education hours, and it is 40 hours for practicing CIS and 20 hours for non-practicing CIS. The Chief Audit Executive actually required to develop and implement a plan for continuing professional development for the internal audit staff, which may be achieved through the on-the-job mentoring and also staff rotation. And continuing professional development is the responsibility of each and every internal auditor. So if any internal auditor thinks that I am not qualified, I am not a CIA, so whether I need to maintain the CPD? Yes, the answer is yes, you need to maintain the continuing professional development, because each and every internal auditor is bound to follow that. So today's discussion is all about that. So these are the ending of the domain 3. Hope you like this video. Thanks for watching.